First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got that.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
okay,
an
he's good.
erratic
Mikhail
detective is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, good, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi there. Pleasant Monday evening to you. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Akash Persaud. Mr. Persaud has serious car problems and couldn't make it from the West Coast. Thanks for being with us. We have one of our generous guests who has never turned down a request to be on this program, and we have said it before and we're saying it now. There are a number of guests on this program that have a blank check to tell us when they would like to appear in this program, who they would like to bring, what views they would like to air on this program. We have treated them and we'll treat them as special guests because they have made this program possible. And for the fourth time on this program is one of Guyana's most articulate attorney and one of the most articulate parliamentarians when he's debating. Our guest this evening is the chairman of the Airport Authority, but not only that, an unrelenting contributor to the rule of law and to Guyanese politics. We will ask him a number of questions because we'd like to have his take on some controversies that are taking shape in Guyana. Our guest this evening is attorney at law and PPP Member of Parliament, Sanjeev Datadin. He doesn't seem to grow old. I will ask him about that. Why aren't you not growing old? I've known you for so long.
Well, I am growing old.
What are you drinking? What are you drinking?
I am growing old, and that's a fact. But Freddie, thank you for being here.
You're not looking old. I know you with that same face, you know.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. Lots of water.
I think the second time you were here, we asked you what you want in life. You said to be a good father.
Still the goal.
So you're being a good father.
I try every day. Some days work takes you away for longer than you wish. But, I try every day. That's the goal. It's not a finished product ever. Every day, you got to do it again.
Sanjeev, we want to talk about when you leave here and couple mornings, you go to court and you come back. When you look over your shoulders, Sanjeev, the 2025 election is on us. So we want your take on some of the issues that they relate to the 2025 election. I'm going to come to that with the new leadership of the AFC, what Timothy Jonas said about his party, ANO. But let's start with the former chancellor of the university, who was the acting human rights commissioner for the UN. he made a statement that turned a lot of eyes, including me, and I wrote 4 columns. I do a daily column for the Chronicle, and I've done 4 already on what he said. He wrote a column in which he enunciated that there's a creeping autocracy in Guyana, and he gave only two opinions of why that is so. He may call it evidence or facts. He said that there seemed to be an attack on NGOs, and legislation is coming in relation to NGOs, and attack, he's talking about the executive, on the judiciary. Those were the 2 examples he gave for him to arrive at Guyana going in the direction of a creeping autocracy. Do you share the view that there's a creeping autocracy? And if you don't, can you argue that an attack on, is there an attack on NGOs, an attack on the judges in this country by the executive?
Freddie, once again, good evening to your viewers. Good evening to my son, Sawyer, who should be in bed by now. And, of course, my daughter, Lily, and my wife. But let me say this, Freddie. The gentleman who wrote, I've come across the article. He is, a respectable gentleman who's been around for a long time. And I mean no disrespect with what I'm going to say. But society has moved. Society is changing. In the old days, for example, no lawyer in this country would ever sue a bank. If a bank said that any citizen was wrong or owed them money, they couldn't find a lawyer to protect them. In the old days, if the police went to court and gave evidence that this was it was gospel. Nowhere would it be questioned. A policeman was supposed to be of a certain standing. In England, we know, in the United States, but in England, the Birmingham group, the Guildford, Ford, Birmingham 6, all of these people are because of things that law enforcement officers did. Society has changed drastically. Now, to say that there is an attack on non-government NGOs is really an overly simplified analysis that does not take into consideration the realities. NGOs are in fact agencies of influence. They want to exercise and educate and guide thought and action in a particular view. There are plenty of NGOs. There are ones, the NGOs to do with medical things, Planned Parenthood, environment. They want to tell you how to treat the environment their way. They want to do you keep your trees, do it this way. There are NGOs that have to do with pets and animals, and that you must elevate the rights of pets, all of which are valuable. We have in Guyana, the Guyana Human Rights Association, that is an NGO, who wants to fashion and influence and make comment about what is going on in society. The Bar Association is an NGO. So, but NGOs all have their own niche and interest, and they expect that their voices should be persuasive. But if you want that, then you have to be open. The world has changed drastically. There are no sacred cows anymore. There are no organizations that can claim to be this way. Amnesty International in the Pinochet case. Amnesty International is a respectable organization. But in Pinochet's case, Amnesty International was brought to bear where a judge of the House of Lords said, I had an association and we should take back the decision. Now, the NGOs that we have here that are trying to influence public opinion, criticize governments, say what? Well, you're saying that if governments can't respond? That if Guyana Human Rights Association says something about the Attorney General, he can't respond to them? Why not? Now, look at what NGOs are. They're funded from somewhere. And I have a personal view. Funding is about influence in many cases. I'm not saying every, but it's about influence. Where was the Human Rights Association when elections? I know everybody says, well, you always say that. But isn't that a human rights issue? The right of every citizen that his vote must count? Isn't that a human rights issue? Why shouldn't the Human Rights Association say what the whole world saw? You had Owen Arta, who said it was clear for the world to see.
Bruce Golden,
Ralph Gonzalez, Mia Motley. Leaders were saying this. But then there were other people who stood up too. There were simple people who stood up. But GHRA didn't. Now, the Guyana Human Rights Association is not transparent. That is not a disputed fact. I do not know who are the members of the Human Rights Association. I do not know who the committees are. I do not know how the membership came about. I do not know the source of funding. I know one man. I have even spoken on behalf of the Human Rights Association on various issues. I have assisted to go to court and represent people that they have recommended for me, pro bono. But it comes a time when you are trying to influence public opinion. You're trying to say it's not right, but how do we know it's not right? Whose opinion is it that it's not right? Is it one man's opinion? Well, if he's so convinced, then he should face the electorate. He should get the backing and mandate of the people. But it cannot be in this day and age where everyone is sharing their view that you tie the government's hand and say, well, look, these set of people can cuss you tomorrow, and these set of people, but you could only respond to these set. This set, no matter how much they cuss you, no matter how much they accuse you, no matter how much they say anything, you can't say anything, because if you do, you'll be criticized. Infringement of the government, autocracy, you're trying to control people. But if people want transparency from a government, they must themselves be transparent. The Human Rights Association in Guyana is not. No one has come forward and said, I am a member. Isn't that a shocking thing? They will want to turn around and say, well, oh, they don't want to be victimized. Victimized by whom? For what? You're a member of a political party, you have to say. You're a member of the Bar Association, but all of the associations have their own niche where they would like to be considered. And I agree, they should be. But their right to criticize the government, I believe, is absolute. They should be entitled to do that. But they have to be able to take the criticism back. You can't criticize the government and tell the government about its policies and expect the government not to respond to you. The government must respond. On the other issue you say about attacks on the judiciary, look, I have seen this. I have been in practice 28 years, and I have seen that where you say something to a judge, that you can't say that to a judge, and you can't say, again, that's a throwback to a bygone era. I hope that what I say is not taken the wrong way, but no judge has the right to shout at a lawyer or a litigant. No judge. I don't care what happened in the past. As a judge, you should be even. You can't have judges saying of lawyers who appear before them that their arguments are infantile and useless and expect that they don't have a response. There is no, again, if you want to dish
you
it,
know about that in Guyana.
you have to take it back. Look, we've had judgments. I have read recently judgments that have criticized and demeaned witnesses and criticized lawyers. The Attorney General, unfortunately, was on the end of both of them. And I know him. I know the Attorney General well. He's my friend. And he's a capable, competent attorney.
One of the best Guyana produced.
But how could judges feel secure in belittling and saying that you argue in such childish first-year law student would not say that? I am disappointed in the judge because as a judge I have tremendous respect for. But judges, listen, we are in a system where if a lawyer is 1 day late in filing a document, you have to prepare all of these applications to come out of time. You have to have a reason. You have to come up with something. And the judge decides to go on holiday tomorrow, the matter that you can't get an adjournment of a hearing date. Oh, it is so sacred and sacrosanct. And let the judge go on holiday tomorrow. And all the matters are vacated. Let there be some conference for judges and all the matters are vacated. Let there be the opening of a magistrate's court in Madhya or vigilance and all the dates are vacated. You can't fight and say to lawyers that you have to be this way. And our judicial time is so precious. But when the judges are occupied, then all of a sudden judicial time is no longer precious. We can't have judges in this country who do not produce judgments in accordance with the law and then want to criticize and belittle and berate lawyers who file a document out of time. I have filed documents out of time on many occasions, Freddie. I will tell you that. Sometimes you are so busy, you have so many matters, you miss it. But why are you punishing people by doing that? It's the litigant who suffers. But judges are adjourning matters willy-nilly. They can accommodate filing. They don't obey the rules. They don't enforce the rules as they should. And they then want to hold the lawyers and the litigants to this high standard. If you don't do it within this time, you've crossed the Rubicon. All hell breaks loose. It cannot be that way. If judges are going to give their decisions in a timely manner, they say it is because they're busy and they're doing a lot of work, and that is true. But what about lawyers who are busy and doing a lot of work? How come it is acceptable if the judges are busy and doing work, which they're doing, and the lawyers are busy and doing work is not an acceptable explanation? The judiciary must understand, as with everything, the way you treat people is the way you were treated. I have been lucky. I have appeared over a number of years in the Privy Council. I have never had a single judge, a law lord, raise their voice at me or anyone else in my presence.
That goes for CCJ too.
In the CCJ, it has been exactly the opposite. They do not raise their voice more than you, the lawyer. It has come to my attention over a period of time I have gone to the court. Some of the retired judges and I mean, even the sitting ones, we would speak casually and politely. And they all make mention that I have a loud voice. And, you know, my wife, well, sometimes when I'm in court and I'm addressing and it's being broadcast, she said, you gotta hold it back because all of the judges, in my experience in the Caribbean Court of Justice, have been very respectful, they speak to you with great respect and humility. And it looks bad because it looks, with me and my big mouth, it looks a little out of place. And over the years of going to the Caribbean Court of Justice, I have made a very conscious effort not to get up to full speed of how I speak because it might come across the wrong way. I mean, I have a little daughter now. She's only 1 year old. But I'm very conscious that sometimes when I'm speaking on the phone or sometimes when I'm speaking, she jumps a bit because I speak a little loudly. So whenever she's in the room or in the house, and I try to. Now she's getting a little accustomed. She's, you know what I mean? She's so. But I understand that it could be something that would be. I don't mean it that way. You know, but I got a big mouth and I got a control. I got a big voice.
I can understand. I have a big.
But what I'm saying is, judges. You know, in the Privy Council, for example, the judges sit on a boardroom table at your level. They don't sit elevated. They sit flat, and that is all the symbolism of they must not be that way. But it is unfortunate, Freddie, that judges criticize in such a personal way lawyers, litigants, and in a way that is unacceptable, and expect that people will not likewise voice views. You know, I believe, I personally, and this is my personal opinion, has always been, I have known judges who have not had criticisms be made of them because they have always been able to roll with the punches, as we say. One of the judges who I have the most respect, and I'm indebted to him for how much he helped, he taught me, he showed me a path, was Justice Chang. You couldn't offend him realistically, if you understand what I mean. But if you were in his presence, you had to have a thick skin too. But if you gave as good as you got, he didn't do anything to you. He didn't try to belittle her, but he had a way of speaking. He was brash and rough, but he would listen. He always did. And he's one of the judges that always wrote his decisions, wrote them on time, did his work. But he understands the give and take of how it goes. Nobody was disrespectful to him, but he was not really disrespectful to people either. And that is more of what will happen. If you are critical, and if you are personally critical of people, you know they will want to respond to you. Recently, judgments that say things about the Attorney General making submissions that a first-year law student would not make I think it's out of place. I think that no judge should make those sort of statements. Because
said that today about the Attorney General.
Yes, this was in a written judgment that was put out. It was said in this matter where Chevron is trying to enforce a judgment against Venezuela in Guyana, and he made a submission. And the judge disagreed with him. And I thought, yeah, judge, fair enough, you disagreed with him. I think the judge is right. But it's how you do it and how you say things that are so aggressive.
But before we move on, I saw a judge really berate the chief education officer. That's a very high level job and a high level position in Guyana. That judge really berated that man.
I saw that too, and I thought
it was unpleasant. It was an unpleasant.
I thought that was not a very nice thing too.
He just sat there and took it. That's a chief education officer for a country, not to harm.
But so, Freddie, I am not saying by any stretch of the imagination you should be disrespectful to a court. But I am thinking comity of relations amongst people should not depend upon what office you hold versus what office the other person holds. I think mutual respect will go well. But I also think that separate and apart from that, judges are people who determine cases. And they should be criticized if the nation or the people think they're wrong. Now, pressuring them is a different thing. I don't think it's public pressure for people to say you're wrong. The Court of Appeal of this country said that 32 was not a majority
33 is not a majority of
33 is not a majority of 65.
34 is. And
and if I criticize that, I am somehow pressuring or interfering. Why can't I criticize that? You know, not to raise personal issues, but on behalf of Mr. Ryan Crawford, who was my client, or who is my client, we wrote to the Chancellor to say the law says there should be a court holiday. From July and August should be a court holiday. We wrote this in July. We advised the court that this was it. Nothing changed. Nothing happened. I have to go file a claim in court now to enforce a statute that judges are not enforcing. The High Court Act says the court shall be on vacation for this period and there should be no trials except for emergencies. And before you could get a hearing, you have to justify to a judge that it is a matter that should be heard in the vacation. This is true everywhere in the Commonwealth. The whole Caribbean, they do that. England, they still do it. In Trinidad, Barbados, St. Lucia, Antigua, Belize, Jamaica. They have the same provision in the law. Nobody has to go tell those judges what they must do. We wrote to a judge, the Chancellor, and nothing changed. We now, what are we to do now? File a case about the judges? I mean, these are preposterous things. And I think, I mean no disrespect to anyone, but I should be able to say that in a clear case of what the law is, the courts should apply it.
One thing I know about you, you always say it. You're very, very obsessed with your family. Your family is your foundation, and you do have a very pleasant family. Sanjeev, a woman, a real woman living in the country, people know her, she is known, and she gets on Facebook, just like how one writes something in the newspaper, and wrote on Facebook that the Minister of Government is having multiple affairs. How could that be tolerated in a modern society where you could destroy a man's marriage? And now there is a contemplation, well, it's not contemplated, it's in the works, of amending the Cybercrime Act to deal with situations. I mean, that is one of the worst abuse of free speech that I can think of. Well, you're endangering a man's
It is.
marriage.
It is. But I would tell you this. So I could state to you what my personal views are. I think the current cybercrime legislation is in large part offensive to the Constitution and does not comply adequately with the Constitution. I see recently there is a number of commentary about what the Attorney General has said. As far as what I understand, the Attorney General and even the Vice President yesterday is saying, the government's intention is, and I think it's born out of a recognition that the current Cybercrime Act, which was passed by the last administration, is a little too draconian and it does not comply with the Constitution and it does not recognize free speech. But we can't withdraw that legislation and leave a vacuum. We have to put appropriate legislation in its place. But this legislation is not designed or intended to squeeze or interfere with free speech, as I understand it. It is not intended to create or to criminalize free speech. But you have to understand that my personal view is the current Cybercrime Act which was 2015, 2018, somewhere around there, cyberbullying must go. That piece of legislation is no good. But I do not think that there should be a vacuum in its place. I think appropriate legislation, much milder and much more focused on what you're trying to do, should be put in place. I do believe that the legislation will provide for both criminal and civil penalties. Now, we are living in a society where it's unprecedented, the access that every person has. And people are pushing boundaries, people say things. I mean, I understand the kind of criticism that people get for saying things. I mean, Mikhail Rodriguez, the critic, he's my client. And recently there was an incident and there was a situation where he did not intend to be disrespectful to a court, but he was. He did the right thing in my mind afterwards. He said, sorry, I did not intend to do this. But there must be, as we navigate this, there must be implications for your actions. You know, people are mindful or willing to say things online about you or me or anybody that they would never say to our face, because they have a veneer of, you know, you can't touch them, or that sort of attitude. But that must go away. I believe that if you say the truth, the truth should be the antidote to any threat. The truth should win every time. But if what you're doing is lying and repeatedly lying, then I don't believe that you should be entitled or feel that you are being victimized or hunted or any of those phrases, because you shouldn't have the right to do that. So you should get no protection where you don't have a right. My personal view is, if you do not have a right to something, you should be afforded no protection. You have a right to free speech, but free speech ends where you impinge upon other people's rights. The same way that it has always been. You can't go into a cinema. This is the classic example.
And cry fire.
And scream fire. And when people are hurt, say that's free speech. It's not. It's a criminal offense. So you have to look at the consequences of what you do. Now, I believe, personally, if you have proof of corruption, and if you have a record to say that there is corruption, you should be allowed to say that there is corruption. It's a little bit different in the example you give, which is a personal aspect of your life. But I think public officials must accept that their public life, because of their public official, their right to privacy is a little less. English law has decided that you give up a little bit of your right to privacy by doing this. And that's all right. But if these things are lies, it don't matter whether you're privacy, whether you're public official, whether you're private, lies are lies. You understand? There is no way to dress that up as being wrong. And what people have to understand is the removal of the Cybercrime Act has to be replaced by something. There could be no vacuum. And whether you say, sitting at a chair next to you, or you say it behind a computer screen, whatever you say must be circumscribed by truth and justification. You can't decide to attack a man and create mayhem and say nasty things and expect that there'd be no consequence. Because if you were sitting next to him, he might thump you. You understand? But as I said, truth and justification is the answer to all. Idle talk should not be permitted.
That was Sanjeev Datadin, the lawyer. Can we move on to another terrain? Sanjeev Datadin, the parliamentarian, the person involved in politics. Sanjeev, a well-known, very competent financial analyst, Joel Bagwandin, sat in that seat, and he said some interesting things that have bearing in the election, which is about 14 months away. He said he has solid information that is incontrovertible, that the foreign investor, the oil investor Exxon, has a stake in the elections. They have chosen Nigel Hughes as a person to back. The intention is to have a consensus candidate with Nigel Hughes as the consensus candidate. Negotiations with Norton, I guess, will take place. And Exxon is hoping for a minority government. I think he said they want a weak government or whatever. But the gist of his presentation is that Exxon has a political interest in the elections. That I'd like to hear your take on that, and whether you think Nigel Hughes is a third-party prospect that could have consequences for the election results.
Well, let me say, Exxon, as I understand, might be the largest corporation on planet Earth. Yeah. And if they have political or politics, I don't know, it wouldn't surprise me that would be so, but I don't know that they do. And I don't know that they would back a candidate. As it relates to Mr. Hughes, this is nothing new. We've seen this game before. We've seen this trick before. The joker always comes out to the pack. This has been seen, and we all know what to expect. These players, there is nothing new. When there was a no confidence motion, it was Nigel Hughes who became the mathematician that caused the country endless pain by advancing an argument that is so untenable. I sometimes sit down now and wonder, how could this? We are an educated country. We are sensible people. How did this hold a nation ransom? How did you get 33 is not a majority to hold 800,000 people ransom?
Sanjeev, there is a facetious side to that thing that
unbelievable.
It's serious, but it makes you laugh. A half man, you have to round it off. Anyway, go ahead.
No, but how did you advance an argument that had a nation? You did because you had a government in place of which his wife was a part of, and of which the party he's a part of was a member of that coalition. And they wanted any excuse to hold on to power. They used the force and power of the state, the police, the army. They have to follow the government. And that government refused to give way. And they said that we have a right to go to court and get it determined. I'm thinking, what in heaven's name you need to determine? So if after that they came, well, listen, tiddlywinks should be the national sport and not cricket. And we should have this determined first. We got to wait until somewhere determines that tiddlywinks and not cricket. It's like this foolishness that was said when Minister Barrett about whether a diplomatic passport makes him a diplomat. And I thought, of course it doesn't make him a diplomat. What does it do? Is it some secret society that you belong to where they give you red passports instead of blue? And this society was formed in Geneva in about 1948. And it allows you what? Front seat to Tiddlywinks games? What do you think a red passport is as a diplomatic passport? There's a whole convention about it. And it don't make you a diplomat. Because some clown wakes up and says, well, you know, a diplomatic passport don't make you a diplomat. And they expect the rest of the civilized world to respond to this. And the government of the day then said that we are entitled to go to court to determine this. No, you're not. I don't think you are. This is not rocket science. You should hold an election within the 90-day period. Your government has fallen. Now, that entire thing is built on Nigel Hughes' architecture. Nigel Hughes has been chairman or various things in the AFC, and the AFC has been part of the APNU government, shamelessly trying to rig the election. I mean, I told a friend of mine in London about the bed sheets and the spreadsheets and what was happening.
And cardboard, a piece of cardboard.
And I told him that I was there in July. I don't think he stopped laughing yet. He still texts me pictures of bed sheets and pictures of spreadsheets to say he cannot believe that this actually held a nation. This sort of foolishness. But it's the same people. I would be seriously disappointed if an international oil company or anybody, any company would think that leadership can come from that. I understand the whole idea that they want this person in play and this, but I think, and I know people have a different opinion, but my opinion is you can't run to be leader or be on a retainer from the oil companies. I think that's wrong. I think that's a conflict. It's a moral conflict, and you should not do it. But that's my view. I also think that this facade that, they will run as a united group and Norton will step aside, I don't think that's going to happen, personally. Norton is in control of the larger faction. I don't see that he would cede, but assuming, I don't know how they work, but I'm assuming that even if they do, the Latin saying is ex nihil nihil fit, from nothing comes nothing. It's the same group. We've seen this trick before. We have seen this entire card trick. AFC went to the nation and promised faithfully they will be the agents of change. It will not be politics as usual. They had people, Mr. Hughes included, and they had Patterson, and they had Trotman, and they had Kemraj, who said, look, this would be a new thing. In the end, they became the PNC. Can you believe Moses Nagamutu in support of an organization with the PNC? That man wrote The 3 Trials of Arnold Rampersad and what happened. The things that he would have been made to suffer at the hands of the PNC, and he was there. Kemraj, the same thing. Can you believe that these people, this is not even a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is a sheep in sheep's clothing. There is nothing. There is no secrecy.
See why people say I have a big mouth.
Yeah, but there is no secrecy. Listen, I say this. Nigel Hughes being the leader of the AFC, we have seen this trick. It's a card trick. We know how it will end. The joker always comes out of the pack. That's easy. To say that there will be a coalition between the AFC and the PNC or the AFC and APNU to form a challenge, didn't that happen in 2015? It happened. And didn't we see what happened? Why do we think doing the same thing over and over will bring a different result? The definition of insanity would be doing the same thing and expecting a different result. There will be none. Leadership is not what that side of the political divide is known for. Accountability is not what they are known for. Respecting the wishes of the people is a convenience. It's not an imperative. They respect the will of the people when the people voted for them. When the people voted against them, they wouldn't. When they lost, and they knew they lost the no confidence motion. The first initial utterances is elections. Then they found an excuse. And they all hang on to it. I dare any one of them to say they actually believe that mathematical BS. Any one of them to say that they didn't think that 33 is the majority. I don't think that they did, but it was a vehicle to thwart the will of the parliament. And they took that further. They appointed a commissioner, a GCOM, as chairman, who they should never have appointed. Unilateral. We saw the true colors of what happens. Guyana should never go back there.
So I take it in that delivery, that adumbration, you have dismissed Nigel Hughes as of any configuration of importance in the...
Well, he chose to try to be Guyana's mathematical leader with disastrous consequences. I don't think we should elevate him to political leader.
So that's it. The AFC, you don't see the AFC have a bearing on the election results?
I think the AFC did enormous damage to itself. Not only by, I think in the first place, my personal opinion, they were wrong to have joined the coalition. But having done that, that was not the death knell. The death knell started when they would not respect the no confidence motion, and they started the charade. The consequence of that then came following the election, when again the will of the people was clear, and they started to dance around facts and truth. I don't think anybody trusts them anymore. And I think the leaders of the AFC would struggle across this country. They lost membership. They lost tremendous. They were bleeding. They were hemorrhaging members. Members simply left because they didn't keep their word to them.
You see any seats for them?
The AFC, I don't know if they can revive themselves.
To get any seats?
To do that. In the local government elections, for example.
They didn't participate.
Because they
participated in 2018 and 2022.
Yeah, but they struggled. The reality was they couldn't put it together. They couldn't get candidates to go forward and represent.
Probably didn't have resources to.
Perhaps, but a large part of that is the membership walked away because of what they did.
You see, you have just dismissed the AFC. You see any opening for third parties? There is one called a new and United Guyana. It's headed by your colleague-in-law, Timothy Jonas. He said in this very seat, they're hoping for about 4 seats. That's just over 20,000 votes. Can Anuk pull that off? Can Timothy Jonas and...
I think in its present thing, no. I have respect for Timothy. But I think what's going to happen, and I understand their different views. So there might be 2 things happening. There might be a situation where the 2 major political parties, people will gravitate back, because politics are cycles. There are times when you would go with the thirds and, you go with the outer line, but then there are times when you come back and it becomes a 2-horse race, essentially, as opposed to all the involvement of all the others. You would remember that in 1988, 90, around then, when they had DLM and all these other parties, there was Democratic Labour Movement, there was WPA, PDM,
People's Democratic Movement,
United Republic. They would be like, and all of them were at the time serious contenders because there was a fight on for democracy. I think now, in having regard to what happened on the last occasion and how close Guyana came into slipping off into the precipice of madness again, I think that people are more inclined to stay in the cemented positions. Now, that's one view. The other view is that they will be, having seen what has gone on, they will be encouraged into venturing their trust in a third party or such. But I think, personally, the trust level for them to make a dent was really abused by the AFC. And a lot of those younger people and a lot of those young people who would be more inclined to trust, they're bruised and they're battle weary. And they're not going to trust the smaller units for the reason of because of the abuse by the AFC. So I think that 4 seats is ambitious. I think in the last election,
Anu got 2,000 votes. You need 5,000 for a seat.
Anu got less votes than
Mr. Badal
Schumann.
And Mr. Badal from Pegasus. But
Mr. Badal, he went alone.
He didn't sign up for the...
He didn't join in the thing, so he did not, but he got more votes. I think he was TCI or something like that.
I can't remember what.
Yeah.
Change Guyana.
Something like that. And then there was the other group.
The New Movement.
Yes.
Akash Persaud.
They got 800 votes.
No. The New Movement with Akash Persaud got 238 votes.
Right.
Citizen Initiative did not do the joiner. The joiner was Anug, Schumann, and Akash.
But I think Schumann got more votes.
Yeah, Schumann got more. Then second was
Anug. And
Akash got 200 or something votes.
And I think the Citizen Initiative did okay with it.
But Badal got...
But Badal was the largest of the remnants. But what I'm saying is, you see what happened then, right? And the reason for the number of political parties is because a dictatorial government, a dictatorship was in motion. There was a government that was refusing to obey the laws, was doing what it wanted, appointing a chairman of GCOM unilaterally, sending the nation to house registration, disregarding the Constitution, not sitting in Parliament, no parliamentary meetings were going on. All of this was the full creep. It wasn't even a creep, it was a march. The courts, the CCJ, were our only saving grace, or we would have been Guyana in the 70s and 80s again.
Permanent power.
Yeah, because the Court of Appeal clearly was not being of any use during any of that. And we would have been stuck with that foolish mathematical problem if we couldn't go beyond the Court of Appeal. Can you imagine the laughing stock Guyana would have been? And what happens, I think, is that's why there were so many parties. Because the fight was real. It was life or death getting past the dictatorship. But I think now that is not the view.
Two issues come up. And I'd like your take on it before the operator says we have 6 minutes more. Do you think that the 33 thing will be the nemesis of Nigel Hughes, the way partition was for UC Guyana? Guyana was never able to live that down.
Never.
His name, every time it comes up, the older generation and his generation would say he wanted partition. Do you think that 33 thing will haunt Nigel Hughes? It will
Forever. I don't think that it could not. For you to advance an argument that would be a vehicle to destroy the rights of citizens and to take advantage of a position of power in which you were then, I don't see how you could forgive that.
The second thing I want to get your take on is the election results. You said people will gravitate to the big parties, but there's some serious hemorrhaging and serious dent of credibility in the current PNC.
Yes.
Could that cause a loss of votes, loss of seats? It happened in 2006 with Corbyn. He had lost so much credibility that he lost 5 seats to.
I think personally that what's going or the force will be this. We're a year and a little bit out from elections. And I think that people always like to play or postulate or envisage what happens in dire situations of various kinds. And we would have every permutation in play now. But as you get closer, the positions harden. And when we're closer to then, we will see that the PPP and the leadership of the PPP are going to stand on their record, what they have done. And I think right now, if they were to stop and do nothing else, stop the Demerara Bridge halfway done, what has been achieved in these 5 years is unprecedented. And what has been delivered to so many people is unprecedented. And I think that the record is going to become important. Now, people want to say, well, there's so much of this going on and there's so much favoritism or there's so much of that. Those are things that always come out in the wash. I am a firm believer that those things, anything like that, never stays secret. It will come into the open. When it does, we will see where the chips fall. If it does. But I am saying that governments are elected on their record. There is all the other things that you will come with. But those are always secondary in my view. People in the cold, hard moment will look how much has changed, how much roads have been built, how much schools, how much money in grants, how much their salary is. These are going to be the factors that are going to drive everything.
The PPP has 33 seats. You think they will build on that? How much more would you give them?
I think they will.
This weak PNC that...
I think they will increase, but the PNC is a historical institution, and I think that there are people who will vote the PNC no matter what. Just like in the PPP, there are people who will vote PPP no matter what. And I think as a result, they're going to get close to what they have, but I also think that the PPP will advance. I think they will advance. The advance is going to be, or I see the advance to be this way, right? If you look at the demographics of local government, you will notice that the PPP is making inroads into the younger groups.
It was extremely
But I believe that the younger groups did not really turn out in their numbers for local government because tradition, local government doesn't quite excite the nation
as the national.
But there were inroads with the younger groups. And I think that will be reflected again in larger numbers come the general election. But we can't bury our head in the sand. It's not a given. The world doesn't work that way anymore. The minute you stop fighting and advancing your cause, you get overtaken. So it is a matter now of advancing the cause. And I think under this president, I don't think it could be disputed that it is unprecedented, the level to which we have grown.
Before we go, he doesn't come within the tradition of your usual Caribbean president. He has a flair, a uniqueness. I don't know I can't get the right word. I can't get the right word in this kind of thing, but he seemed to be a different man.
He has a big difference. My humble opinion is this. He has the common touch, meaning, unlike most leaders that you would have seen, he could sit down and gaff with you.
Yeah.
And if you ever go to cricket, he likes cricket, I like cricket. Sometimes I sit down next to him. It's ding dong, He got his views. He thinks who he backs.
But he has this thing that.
But that's what he could do. He could go to the market and talk to the vendors. He could sit and talk cricket.
He likes doing that. You will find that episodically with other Caribbean leaders.
No, but that's what he really likes.
Right, that is what he likes. But the operator signal, we're out of time. Sanjeev, election is about 14, 15 months away. Do you think, Sanjeev, you were there in Ashwin building, you were there fighting the case in the CCJ. Is there any scope at all for any gray area in the next election? Shouldn't it be one of the most transparent, given the things we have in place? We got a couple of seconds.
I think the answer is it's not likely to happen. We've done the amendments of the law. We are more vigilant. We are better prepared. The whole nation is more educated as to their rights and the law. I don't think we're going to have that again. And I pray we don't.
Sanjeev, it's nice to be here. I want you to know you have a blank check for being on this program, and anyone that you think should be on this program so the viewers can see their views, please pick up the phone and call. It's always nice talking to you.
Pleasure, Freddie. It's
I have to say this before our viewers go. I know your father, and he didn't have a big mouth.
I know. Thank you, and good night to your viewers, and may your God be with you.
Thanks for being with us. Catch you later. Thanks for listening and viewing Sanjeev Datadin. Bye-bye.